Fantasydraft.com. Dave Lochran, Ben Rasa, and you know him as the #1 ranked DFS player in the world, Alex Baker, Awesemo himself. Oh, fellas, I had a long weekend. It's good to be talking a little football today. I did 36 hours of travel time where there was really no travel whatsoever. Never fly American Air. How are we today?
Better than you, I think. You look drained, but at least your boys got the win on Thursday.
Yeah. Speaking of drained, woke up this morning to my refrigerator leaking.
So,
we're in a good spot. What's up, Alex?
I'm feeling pretty good now. I mean, just another Sunday for me, but that's the best day of the week these days. So I'm excited to break this down with you guys.
All right. Well, we've got 12 games, and we will jump right into it because I want to be able to cover all of these in depth. When we hit on each game, any relevant injury news, we'll hit on it then instead of prior. Ben, I generally not a question that carries a ton of weight in football, but is there any wind, rain, or weather that's concerning you today?
Not really. I mean, the Broncos game looks a little dicey, but that's not a game that I liked to begin with, so it just makes it even an easier, mostly stay away from me.
Okay, Alex, any thoughts? Anything here we need to know?
Same, except I like that game. So
Ooh.
now, Ben, you're making me nervous.
Yeah, that's again. I think I should be the one nervous in that situation. But, that would be interesting. I'm interested to hear what you say about that.
All right. Well, let's get right into it then. Ben, we've got Tennessee at the Atlanta Falcons. They are 3.5 point dogs. It opened at 5. 24.7 applied total for Atlanta. 21.25 for the Tennessee Titans. 46 point over under. Really looking at both sides of this, we can start with Atlanta. They have been very up and down this season. Struggled immensely against Minnesota. Couldn't put any points on the board until garbage time. Looked better against the Eagles, but Ryan still got picked 3 times. He's now been intercepted 6 times in 3 games on the year. And then against Indiana, 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception, but couldn't come up with the win. It's a tough Atlanta team to really get down or to really nail down, but Tennessee's also had some holes in their secondary. What do you make of the offense here for the Falcons?
Yeah, this is a game, I mean, just from a macro perspective, the Falcons really need this game. They're at home. They should, if they're going anywhere, they need to win games like this. And you mentioned it. Matt Ryan has to stop turning the ball over. For fantasy purposes, yeah, he's getting it done. I think he's one of many quarterbacks kind of in that mid-range that are in play today. You've got Julio. Ridley disappeared last week, but he's going to be kind of that boom and bust. And then we talked, at length about Freeman last week. He started to show some signs, but it's still not a running game that overly excites me. So despite me thinking that they do get the job done at home, it's not a team that I really love. There's a couple obviously pass catchers, but it's not a great game for me to get my lineup started with.
Yeah, I'm with you. Now, Alex, what about you? We'll get to, Keanu Neal and the injuries to the Atlanta secondary, but first, Atlanta Falcons offense, what are you doing with them here against the Titans, knowing that, of course, Julio Jones in any matchup is capable of exploding. Calvin Ridley has, like Ben said, disappeared, at other times been huge. And Austin Hooper, this is my guy, not this week, just in general. I think he's going to have a big season. He's off to a solid start. 2 scores and 177 yards across 3 games. Not bad for a tight end, but there are a lot of quality tight ends towards the top today. How do you prioritize Atlanta skill players?
I think that this game doesn't really scream a lot of fantasy potential, and that's one of the reasons I'm interested, because any game could become a shootout given the right circumstances. And Atlanta, they get it done through the air, so it's pretty easy to stack up Ryan with Julio and one of the other receivers. Sanu, Ridley, and Hooper are all in play. And when that goes off, and you run it back with Tennessee, like Henry, or maybe take a shot on a receiver, then you could have a big payday because no one else is on it.
Okay. The other side then, Alex, like I said, Keanu Neal out, torn ACL. Atlanta could struggle in that secondary. But Marcus Mariota, in the same breath, has been, a far cry from competent. not just this season, but a few seasons now. Look, he's had a couple of good games. I'll give him that. But this offense relies on the run game. And when they can't establish the run, it turns ugly pretty quick, especially coming off a game where he was sacked like 437 times by the Jacksonville Jaguars. Any interest here for Tennessee?
Yeah, I think Henry is in play. He's a little bit expensive compared to some of the options this week. A lot of good value running backs. And for receivers, I could see taking a shot on Corey Davis. He hasn't had a good game yet, but it hasn't been for lack of playing time. So eventually, Tennessee's going to have to throw the ball, and I project him to be the number one receiver. Not that a ton, but still my preferred option there.
Ben, any interest in Tennessee?
I'm a little if you're really going to target the game, Delaney Walker, maybe running back Corey Davis, but I don't have a ton. I will say that Deion Lewis is playing more than you would think, but he's still not producing much. So maybe in the right game script, even though you could say last week was the right game script and he wasn't giving you much. So it's a team that I really am not looking to target unless it fits kind of a stack if I'm running it back with one of these Titans.
Okay, so really nothing that appeals to you all that much?
No, not really.
Okay. Alex, let's talk about Baltimore and Cleveland. This is a hugely important game for the Cleveland Browns. To avoid a mutiny, whether it be the fan base or the team. Things have, I don't want to say gotten ugly in Cleveland, but they surely haven't gotten off to the start they were looking for. Baker Mayfield, according to Rex Ryan at least, is wildly overrated. I'm kidding. But I think the expectations on him were set extremely high, and they have quickly come crashing down. They need to get a win here in Baltimore, but this is not exactly a spot where you're expecting them to come firing out of the gate. I mean, Jimmy Smith is still out, but it's still a solid Baltimore defense. I don't really take much into account when it comes to what Patrick Mahomes does to him because matchups don't matter for him. But the Browns are 7.5-point dogs, and they have a sub 20-point implied total here. I'll tell you what, expectations have come down quickly on this Browns team over the first 4 weeks of the year.
I think this is a really tough spot for them. Baltimore's defense is strong, but the best defense in the NFL is a good offense. Actually, I just made that up.
It sounds legit if you say it.
Yeah, but where it's going to come into play is Baltimore runs almost 7 plays per drive. Cleveland runs only 5.3 according to my projections. And that means Baltimore, assuming they have an equal number of drives, will get a large majority of the plays. And having a lack of plays on offense will make it hard for Cleveland to really put together some big fantasy performances. Baltimore running the ball so often, they just can extend drives a lot. Okay.
Do you see the same, Ben?
I mean, I certainly see that Cleveland needs this game. They're a touchdown dog, and this is Freddie Kitchens. The hot seat is going to be dangerously insane if they get blown out here.
Oh, yeah.
It's a tough spot. I don't love, stacking it up. You've got Chubb, you've got Odell, who the Ravens defense is good. I'm not saying that, but they're not. I feel like certain teams they hold, not just in the NFL and college too. It's the Ravens defense. They're always good. I don't think this defense is nearly as good as some of the past versions of itself. And I think it could be exploited in spots. But if you're telling me, to hitch my wagons to a full-on Brown stack, I'm not there. But I'm going to try to get some Odell in particular. I think on the back end, he could be live for, he's Odell. He obviously has a ceiling every time he steps out there.
Yeah, one thing for me, though, is if you take a look at where this team has been beat up, Baltimore, I'm talking about, the slot, they have had some trouble with slot defense. I mean, Larry Fitzgerald and Kirk combined for 210 yards in week 2, and 160 of them came out of the slot. May have been more. I can't remember the exact number, but a lot of production has come in the slot against this Baltimore defense. So I'm the furthest thing from enamored with, like a Jarvis Landry, but I could see him being somebody that ends up, having one of these games. He has 7 targets or more in 3 straight. I can't say, again, I'm not in love with him, But I guess, Ben, all it comes down to is where has this Baltimore defense struggled, and reasonable to point out that the slot has been an area of weakness for them.
It's true. Landry is just, it's it never feels good to play him. He's kind of that pseudo cash play because he's going to get you like 12, but with scores seemingly higher and higher every week on the most part, it's tough to see him unless he falls in the end zone for you, really being a benefit in large field GPPs.
Do you have any other interest, Beckham or Chubb or anything?
Yeah, like I said, Odell I think has the ceiling, and Chubb, there's a lot of mid-range running backs, and we'll get to them. He's someone I don't mind in certain circumstances, but again, this is not a team. This is a tough spot. There's no denying that, so I'm not trying to force in Browns for my lineups.
Okay. Do you want to add anything here, Alex, from either Baltimore or Cleveland side?
I like the Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews stack. I think that, assuming that he's a little healthier than last week, he's been the number one option. Marquise Brown maybe put up more fantasy points over the course of the season, but Andrews gets more of the targets, and that's the guy I'm looking to, so I can capture some correlation with a guy who gets a lot of his fantasy points from rushing.
Okay. Yeah, Ben, what are your thoughts on Andrews? My only concern here isn't that he isn't good or a top target of Lamar Jackson. The only thing I don't like is that when I'm looking at snap counts and how often some of these guys are on the field, I mean, there are some really even splits between Boyle, Andrews, and Hurst. I worry that I don't know if he can sustain that type of workload if he's only playing 50% of the snaps. But maybe that's an unnecessary concern.
No, I mean, it's a guy that's clearly got a lot of talent, and he's certainly a viable part of the offense. The price has made it where his margin for error is getting thinner and thinner. He needs to find the end zone, and it makes it tough, especially, just looking across the industry, he is priced up a bit. There's a lot of tight ends. I mean, Hollywood Brown, you know what you're getting with him. He has a terrible floor. If he catches 170-yarder, you're already there. The Browns secondary is banged up. Greedy Williams looks like he's out. Ward, I believe, is out as well. That could be a problem. I'm willing to roll the dice in spots with Lamar. To Hollywood, I think you kind of know what you're getting into there. You just need to hope this is one of those weeks where he goes for, 3 catches, $150 and 2 style.
Do you have Cleveland losing this game? Like I said, 7.5-point dogs. It opened at 6. You're the Cleveland Whisperer, right?
Yeah, I am the Cleveland Whisperer, especially this year. I've actually been right about them because I'm not on this Baker bandwagon. I think that they have a real chance to get the win here. I hope they lose, but this is a all-hands-on-deck situation early in the year. I would take the points if I had to make a bet on the game.
Is it odd that I rooted very heavily for Cleveland over the past several years, and now I kind of just dislike them?
Oh, I'm the king of both of those. I was like, DeShone Kizer Cleveland was like my favorite team, and I can't stand this version of them. I hope they lose by 50 today.
The only one...
Just get out.
I just feel bad for the fan base. I mean, it's been rough.
They got LeBron. That was good
yeah,
enough.
You know what? And they have the Indians. They're good enough, right? Not this year, but they're not terrible.
They're fine.
I think the Columbus Blue Jackets made the playoffs, so...
Sure.
Could be worse. Alex, talk to me about Buffalo and New England. Rex Burkhead expected to go. Julian Edelman expected to go. So both of them should be on the field today, barring any setbacks prior to kickoff. The Patriots are only 7-point favorites on the road. Very low total in this game, 41.5. I think it's a testament to how Buffalo's defense has played this year. They are undefeated thus far. Granted, they haven't exactly had the most imposing of matchups, right? Cincinnati, New York Jets, and New York Giants. Like, you should be 3-0 in this case. But yeah, 7-point spread to me, a little bit surprising. We're either going to see today, and you can agree or disagree, if Buffalo is real or if they're about to get entirely exposed in front of a home crowd.
Yeah, I think the most likely outcome is that they're going to lose the game because New England is a very strong team and Buffalo is just a good one. So I could see taking some shots on Josh Allen, just hoping that he has to throw the ball a ton to keep up with the Patriots. But there aren't really any low price values in this game, so it makes it a little bit hard to justify over some other games today.
Okay, Ben, Buffalo, New England. Your prediction, score, game flow. Is Buffalo for real?
I really hope so. Big test for my boy Josh. For them, I think if they can just hang in, that will be somewhat of I know there's no moral victories in this league, but if they get exposed, that would be disappointing. The problem with the Patriots, I mean, in terms of fantasy, their defense is phenomenal. You have Gilmore probably going to take away Smokey, and then what are they really going to do? Are they going to try to establish the run? I mean, that's a tough ask. The key for Buffalo is limiting turnovers, but this is more of a talking about the actual game. On the fantasy side, there's really not much that I like. To me, it feels like a game where the Patriots slowly wear them down. The spread seems right. 24-17 type game feels about right in my book.
And we see that often with this Buffalo team whenever they face the Patriots. It's just wear them down late in the game. The better team shows up. The worst team can't put any points on the board. Does this mean you're targeting anyone, though? Because, John Brown to me in this matchup is wildly unappealing. The backfield to me is not something that I'm particularly interested in either. I don't believe that we're going to have Devin Singletary, so I guess you're looking at Frank Gore. And then on the other side, kind of the same situation I've been discussing over the past several weeks, except Buffalo has a better defense than many of the teams that the Patriots have faced thus far. Where is the ball going to go to, especially with Edelman and Burkhead active?
So I've gotten myself in trouble many years because the Patriots are always amazing. But I will say the Patriots haven't played a team that have won any games yet. They all are winless.
So is that right? They're a combined 0-9?
That's right. Steelers.
You're right.
They murdered the Dolphins, and then they murdered the Jets. So let's not get too crazy. We're going to find out. Maybe New England's that good, but maybe they're just playing some bozos. So I'm not super sold on it. James White is the guy, Chad is talking about him. I totally see the narrative there. If Burkhead doesn't play, short, quick passes, we know how he can rack up 10, 12 targets in a hurry. Other than that, though, Tre'Davious White is, I would assume, go to Gordon, even if he doesn't shadow. I'm not looking to really target the more straight pass catchers. I think James White is the extent of my Patriots exposure.
And Rex Burkhead is expected to play, so
okay.
There's that. What do you make of this one on both sides, Alex?
Yeah, just not a lot of interest here. I think that two good defenses should really limit the fantasy production. And the guys that we'd like on the Patriots are a little bit expensive. This game is actually one of the lowest on my top stacks tool of the day. New England I only have as a 1.5% chance of being the top stack, while Buffalo is a 0.5% chance. So when one of these teams has the top scoring performance of the day, don't at me. I told you there's a chance, but I'm just not. I'm not seeing it today.
Okay, let's move on. Then I'll start with you. Alex, Detroit and Kansas City. Patrick Mahomes, man. The dude gets it done every single day. He's spectacular. I have nothing bad to say about him. He has 10 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. He's thrown for 370 yards or more in 3 straight games to open the season. You just cannot beat this production. Now, as far as salary goes, that's a discussion we can get into. And on the other side, Matthew Stafford is questionable but expected to play in this one. I want to start with the Kansas City Chiefs, though. This is probably a spot where I go back to Sammy Watkins because his team has a 31-point implied total. There's a 54.5-point over-under. They're 7.5-point favorites on the road. And despite 2 underwhelming performances, he is still the clear favorite target of Patrick Mahomes. He has 32 targets in 3 weeks, averaging more than 10 per game. And he just, over his last 2, hasn't had that monster effort that we saw in week 1. But it's always going to be on the table when it comes to Watkins when Patrick Mahomes is throwing to him. What's your take on the Kansas City offense with Damian Williams sidelined again, Alex?
I like him a lot. The Lions are a nice matchup. not the toughest defense, and Darius Slay is expected to not play in this game, which is just another boost. They have averaged over 9 yards pass over the last 20 games, which is absurd. Watkins and Kelsey are still benefiting from Tyreek being out. And Kansas City just doesn't run the ball that much. They've only run about a little bit less than 40% over the past 20 games, where they've won 75% of the games. So I'm expecting them to throw the ball out today, and with some concentrated targets in Watkins and Kelsey, they should be able to get it done.
All right, what about you, Ben?
There's no doubt. I mean, if Slay sits, that's going to be already a secondary that was going to be under Mahomes. Doesn't seem to matter, and that just adds more fuel to the fire. So, with all these teams, I see this in college all the time. It's pick your poison. If Hardman or Robinson catches a 60-yarder, well, you got to live with that. But Watkins is the clear number one on the outside. Travis Kelsey, I think we all know if you have the money at tight end, go and get him. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, the Chiefs, I believe I heard this, and don't quote me if I'm wrong. This is Mahomes' first game ever in a dome, which is insane just to think about that. Him indoors, who knows?
Really?
That's what I believe I heard. Now, like I said, I could be wrong on that, but either way, this game I can confirm is in a dome. I'll go that far to say that with the Lions. It's hard not to like the Chiefs in some capacity. They're going to move the ball. The bigger question I have is, what do you do on the Lions side? Do you try to run it back? You have a number of options on the outside, and then you have Carry-On, who I think as a show we're all pretty high on in life. I'm just, week in and week out, it's not as consistent as I would love.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's been some true disappointment when it comes to Curry Johnson, whether it's his efficiency or his workload, which we've seen go back and forth. He saw 20 carries in week 3, but, was just completely ineffective. Really tough Eagles run defense. They will just shut you down at the line of scrimmage. And he did score. But Curry Johnson has not shown it yet. Do you think, compared to what we saw from Kansas City's defense last year, where would you put them this year, Ben? You think run defense is better than it was last year when it was at the bottom of the league? Or do you think we should still be targeting it heavily as, one of the more inferior run defenses in football?
So, chat pointed out, first NFL game in a dome for Mahomes. Appreciate that backing me up, chat. I think the answer to that is both. I think they've made some strides on the defensive side.
By the way, they're still 32nd in run defense DVOA on Football Outsiders.
And the second part of that is I think you clearly still need to target them.
Right.
Not just because it's a weak unit. Barring, I'm not the biggest Patricia fan, but you would think he would know the way to keep this game in check is to keep Mahomes off the field. Try to control the game on the ground, pound it with Carry-On 20-plus times, and hope to really limit the scoring on both sides. So I think he's going to be busy as long as they can stay within. And with Stafford being somewhat banged up, you have to go to the ground in this game.
I don't see how you couldn't go to the ground unless you can get Kenny Golladay heavily involved here or Marvin Jones. They've switched off over the first couple of weeks. Alex, we've seen TJ Hawkinson take a backseat role, which is not surprising. Anyone that thought he was going to sustain that monster production after week 1 against an Arizona defense that's allowing 30 fantasy points per game to tight ends this year, they had another thing coming.
Yeah, I think that Hawkinson, after that first game, he hasn't been quite as good, but still kind of on my radar because when you add up all 3 games, he's been running routes on about 2/3 of the passing plays, and he's gotten targeted 16 times. Pretty good protection for a tight end. And then Jones and Golladay are both on the field almost every passing play, and they're getting targeted at a good rate, so they make really nice plays. Danny Amendola is questionable, and I think he's a true game time decision. So I'll be watching that because I do have some interest if he is playing, maybe taking a flyer because he's cheap on some sites. But my favorite option is Kerryon Johnson. I've been playing him a lot in game stacks where I'm hoping that the Lions get off to an early lead and maybe Kerryon gets some touchdowns. And then Kansas City just has to check the ball a bunch, and that'll be how you rack up mad fantasy points from Mahomes and company.
All right. Ben, Houston is a 5.5 point favorite, 26.5 point implied total against the Panthers. They're at 21 points, 5.5 point dogs, 47.5 over under here. Kyle Allen was outstanding in his first start of the season, 19 to 26, 261 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. Again, though, against an Arizona defense that has really struggled, and without Patrick Peterson, I think he should be back after this week. It's been pretty dismal, but this is a tougher matchup. Houston has had some holes, but they're still a respectable defense. Again, almost a touchdown favorite. Starting with Houston, you've got guys like Deshaun Watson. You have Duke Johnson, who people were very heavy on coming into the year. He went from 9 to 6 to 2 carries over from weeks 1 through 3. Really disappointing output from him. While Carlos Hyde has had at least 10 carries in all 3 games, but the run game has struggled to get it going. DeAndre Hopkins has come up short in each of his last 2 games, but we know he's one of the best receivers in football. How are you approaching Houston against the Panthers?
Houston, really interesting team. Just in life and DFS, it's just a team that they're all over the map. But we know Deshaun Watson is a guy who takes a lot of hits, but the upside is there. It's not the most efficient, but that sometimes can be a good thing. And then we talk about, as you mentioned, DeAndre Hopkins been a little quiet. Now, Casey Hayward and Jalen Ramsey in the last 2 games will do that to you. I don't worry about him one bit. And then, as I talk about a lot on this show, you have a bucket of guys in this league that are just those straight pure burners. Will Fuller is one of them. We haven't seen the explosion yet. He's playing like 90+% of snaps. It's coming. Is it going to be this week? I kind of hope so, because I am over on him. And this is a team that I don't mind pairing up. Watson with some of these pass catchers. Not going to attack the running back situation, but when you tell me some of these guys, the price points are there, the ownership is not gravitating towards them, I have a lot of interest in Houston kind of across the board.
Yeah, I think DeAndre Hopkins has to stand out a little bit, right? Just in that he is so much better than his recent production has been, and anybody would be crazy to assume that he can't turn that around. And when you throw it up against like a Keenan Allen ownership, granted, they are definitely down bodies there in LA, or Tyler Lockett, or even Cooper Kupp, you're getting DeAndre Hopkins at pretty low ownership, just given his abilities to blow a slate wide open.
No doubt. It's just a team that, like I said, I really think has the makings of what could be a really good stack this week.
What about you, Alex? Any interest here?
Hopkins, I've been kind of down on, and the reason why is because last year when he had such a crazy year, Kuti and Will Fuller combined for less than a full season. This year they added a new guy, Kenny Stills, to the mix. Kuti and Fuller are both healthy, so the net result is the Texans are running a lot more 3 wide receiver sets, in which Hopkins should get targeted at a lower rate. So I do have him down a notch from kind of his reputation, and he is pretty expensive on different sites, but I think just because wide receiver has so much variance, I'm going to be taking some shots on him, even though objectively I don't think it's a great spot.
Okay. What about Carolina?
I think Christian McCaffrey shouldn't take too much of a hit with the quarterback change. In fact, I think Kyle Allen should be a benefit to McCaffrey, at least as far as targets, because he's not as mobile a quarterback, and he should have to check down to the running back to get out of some danger. So I think Christian McCaffrey is one of the highest projected players of the week. He's my spend-up play. And then DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel are kind of they're not really values because they are a little bit pricey for the kind of players they are, but they could be like a GPP play for sure.
Okay, Ben, do you have any interest in Carolina? Obviously, Christian McCaffrey on a day where Saquon Barkley is hurt, Ezekiel Elliott isn't on the slate. Christian McCaffrey is your clear, number 1 running back just compared to the rest of the field, especially on an afternoon where Dalvin Cook faces a really stout Chicago front.
I don't want to say that's the problem, but I'm getting to more McCaffrey than, not that I even want. It's just I have salary that we're going to talk about, a lot of cheap guys in advantageous positions throughout the slate. I have nowhere else to spend the salary in some spots. So,
Right.
I get it, but at the same time, I'm sort of funneled there with lack of options. He, of course, is going to get the work. I think Alex kind of talked about the two receivers. I'm indifferent to them. I don't have a strong take. It's a team, I will say, the Texans defense is, I mean, they're certainly not the Cardinals. 9 sacks in the last 2 games. They are at home. I think Kyle Allen's going to have a much tougher time this week than we saw last week. So it's not a team I'm interested in stacking. I certainly have my fair share of McCaffrey. Some of that, though, is just by the fact that I needed to spend some of that salary up top.
Any interest in the pass catchers?
Nothing really outside of, what I need someone at this kind of price point, and I don't mind. Samuel's a talented guy, pretty explosive, and DJ Moore is someone that's going to be looked to. I'm not going to chase Olsen. The Cardinals defense, I think, was more of the reason for his breakout last week than anything else. So not a huge priority for me in this passing game.
All right. Let's go on to the next one here. We get to the midway point in the show. Oakland and the Indianapolis Colts. Alex, Colts have been a pretty solid football team this year. I believe that even without Andrew Luck, they're a pretty formidable team. Not a Super Bowl contender, but a good team because I believe in Frank Reich. And I think Jacoby Brissett's ability to practice with the team all summer long has definitely shown up early on this season. 26-point implied total for the Colts, 19.5 for the Raiders. Raiders are 6.5-point dogs on the road in a game with a 45.5 over/under. And, of course, it should have been expected, but T.Y. Hilton not expected to play in this game. Definitely a hit for a Colts offense that has relied heavily on his production through 3 weeks.
Yeah, it seems like a situation where we could get some fantasy value, but I'm not really finding any. This game is going to be pretty slow. Indiana and Oakland play at the 27th and 28th fastest rates in the league. With T.Y. Hilton out, I'm expecting a rotation of 4 guys and wide receiver, Deion Kane, Paris Campbell, Rodgers, and Pascal. Paris Campbell is the guy that I expect to be the lead role because he gets more of the short passes compared to Deion Kane, who's more of a deep threat. And the problem with that is Paris Campbell is actually pretty expensive on Draftkings Fanduel and Fantasydraft. So he's not a kind of value play like he should be. And because of that, I'm not landing on him.
Are you finding anything else you like here, Ben?
I mean, the pass catching is a big mess for the Colts. Those 4 guys, there are more questions than answers. I wouldn't be stunned, of course, for one of them to have a big game, but I don't know how you separate. Now, Kane is the lowest price. Campbell's the one in a vacuum I would like the best, but as Alex just talked about, he's priced up with guys that this is a rookie out of Ohio State that we haven't seen much of. I think Marlon Mack is the one who would benefit here. He should have a big game. He should be busy. They want to control it on the ground. I see no reason not to go to him as another one of those solid mid-range running backs.
Okay. What about the other side?
Well, I mean, the Colts are sneaky, especially on the defensive side. They're banged up pretty bad. If Leonard doesn't play, I think we know, the one good thing about the Raiders is their production's pretty concentrated. We know Waller's going to be involved, Jacobs in the right game flow, and then Tyrell Williams over the top. I don't really like that spot, but certainly Waller makes a viable tight end play. And if you do think that the Raiders can hang in there, Josh Jacobs is going to get the work. There's no doubt about it. So you can take stabs there, especially, like I said, with a tight end I think we all see as emerging as a serious target.
Okay. Yeah, Darren Waller's been outstanding, man.
He really has.
There's nothing really bad to say about him outside of him not having a touchdown yet, but they will come, and I mean, how often do we see touchdowns that just be such a volatile stat? Like, look at Devontae Adams. Last year, what did he have, like 15? He doesn't have one yet this year. Meanwhile, Julio Jones has found the end zone in each of his first 3 games. They come and go. Obviously, there's less touchdown equity for a guy like Waller on a bad offense, but I think it'll start to come as long as he continues to see these targets. What are your thoughts on the Oakland Raiders offense, Alex?
I find them a little bit tough to get to. I agree with you guys' assessment of Waller. He's a nice fantasy player, and I'm disappointed I didn't get him in the last round of the draft. But
I did, by the way.
Man,
Not
nice
bad.
play.
I thought you were talking about our Awesemo League.
Yeah. Well, that too. I mean, we got some money riding on that. He's been exceeding my expectations this year. 29 targets. That's amazing. He's been running routes on about 7 out of 8 passing plays. So that's relatively high for a tight end. Most hover in the 50 to 65% range. And he's not super expensive yet. Only $5,200 on Draftkings, 10.9 on Fantasy Draft. So he'd be my guy to go to out of all him and Tyrell Williams. Tyrell Williams is a little bit more expensive, but I don't project him to be a better play, and wide receiver is a little bit easier to fill.
Okay, yeah, Colts are allowing it's very early, but top 6 fantasy points per game allowed to tight ends for whatever that's worth. I think it's hard to take those numbers and do much with them, but Ben, you mentioned some injuries. How much does that play into it for a banged up defense here?
Well, I just think that it's a Colts team that, I didn't think they were all too talented to begin with on the back end. They're doing their part, and they get a Raiders team that, again, it's certainly not across the board where I want to target them. But when you see a breakdown kind of in the mid-range with those linebackers, Waller is someone that immediately, just thinking about what the Colts do with the zone, try to limit those big plays. That's like, Austin Hooper last week really had success against them.
Oh, yeah.
And was those underneath routes. And then, again, this is one sample size. You look at what Ridley did, and he's more of that home run threat. He was nowhere to be found. So someone, underneath with Waller, I think is more where you want to go than a Tyrell Williams who is looking for that over-the-top kind of home run play.
I hear you. Do you guys have anything else on this, Alex?
Just another hard game to get to. I think there are several games on the slate that are just really good for fantasy, and the others are kind of duds. It's kind of black and white for me.
All right, well, maybe we'll get to one of those next. Doubtful, but we'll try. Before we do, I want to let you know that Fantasy Draft, the only rake-free daily fantasy sports site, is bringing the heat again with a $700,000 guaranteed rake-free contest, the Hooters main event. It's the largest and only rake-free contest of its kind you'll ever find, or at least you'll find for week 4. And remember, only on Fantasy Draft are 100% of entry fees paid to the contest winners. Sign up at fantasydraft.com with referral code AWESOMO, and you'll get a 7-day free trial membership. Again, only one that's running these type of rake-free contests. $700,000 Hooter main event, largest of its kind. You can only find it this week at fantasydraft.com. Use the referral code AWESOMO and get a free 7-day trial membership over there at fantasydraft.com. Sponsor of the NFL Deeper Dive. All right, Ben. Chargers, Miami. I very, very curious to know where you stand on this game because the Chargers are monster favorites, right? Opened at 16.5, still 14.5 favorites on the road. Xavier Howard said that he's motivated to bounce back after last week. And look, Sal Vetri, I think it was Sal Vetri mentioned this when we were on the strategy show this week, and I couldn't have agreed more. It looked like Xavier Howard didn't care in that game. And, I have a couple reasons to think, why he might not care. But Melvin Gordon was only going to be used in emergency situations. I'm jumping around here. Bear with me. I want to cover all of it. Keenan Allen's ownership right now is projected to be the highest on the slate, and I think for good reason. But he's going to be very, very popular in a game where, who knows, against the worst run defense in terms of yards allowed, maybe they just run the hell out of the ball, and it's not necessary to go there. And then, of course, just to add one more wrinkle into this big mess, Mike Williams with a back injury has been ruled out. So, of course, no Hunter Henry, no Mike Williams. Melvin Gordon reports, and he will be on the field, but maybe not. Well, he'll be on the sideline for most of it. Oh, and Justin Jackson is out, and he's likely going to be out for a few weeks. So this is an insane game to break down because let me put it to you this way. The logical person would say Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler get all of the work. Someone like me who, or you or anyone, it's trying to look at it differently, obviously knows that they should get all of the work. But what if this whole Melvin Gordon coach speak thing is nonsense? What if they do run the hell out of there's so many different ways this can go, and they have massive ownership, Ben. So that's a long way of me asking, what the hell are you doing with this game?
I wish I knew. Yeah, and you didn't. Travis Benjamin is also doubtful.
Oh, thank you. Yes, Travis Benjamin as well.
They are. So let me just step back. It's opened at 16.5. It's down to 14.5. I'm going right on the record right now. I bet the Dolphins early in the week. I like the Dolphins in the spot, not to win the game.
Outright?
No.
Okay.
I'll put it like this. I didn't take the Chargers in Survivor, so take that for what it's worth.
Oh,
They are banged up. Now, Eckler, he is not a workhorse back. He's really expensive. I think for him to get return on what you're looking for, he needs to break one in this game. I think it's the only way he gets there. I don't think he can do it on pure volume. I really don't.
I think you're right.
Then you look at Keenan Allen. The only bright spot for the Dolphins is Howard on the back end. Now, I was completely wrong. Amari Cooper worked him, and as you mentioned,
I was wrong as well. I didn't like that spot.
So, but again, Keenan Allen, incredibly popular. He's going to get the targets. He has to because there's nowhere else to go. But I'm not sure that I see a gigantic ceiling there. Then you have Dontrell Inman, who I would assume would be the next man up. He is the flat min. I did look to him where I wanted to go a little more stars and scrubs, and it's more by necessity. I mean, can Eckler and Allen do literally everything? My answer would most likely be no. But I have a feeling this is a somewhat sloppy, lower-scoring game where, yes, I think the Chargers find a way to squeak through, but I'm not actually in love with it from a fantasy perspective as much as I thought I would be.
Do you think Howard, I don't see any way he shadows Allen, do you?
I mean, I don't know if he'll follow him into the slot, but...
And he runs like half of his routes out of the slot.
He does, but at the same time, I don't know, I'll be honest, obviously, but it feels like, are they really going to try to put him on take away Inman on some of these routes? It feels like they almost
exactly
to go in there. And then, you look at the other side of the game. I know I'm jumping around a bit. Is it Kenyon Drake season? I don't know. Probably not, but I will say that if the Dolphins are going to hang in, him and Preston Williams would be where I'd want to run it back if you're choosing to stack up this game or even just have exposure to both sides of it.
Alex, the interesting thing about this game is that if Xavier Howard is locked on to Keenan Allen, it could be a Dontrell Inman game. We've seen him once or two in the past. They're not pretty, but while this game, I agree with Ben, is probably going to be sloppy and maybe lower scoring than we think, the Chargers will still find ways to score against this Miami defense. It's just where will they come from and how much Xavier Howard is Keenan Allen going to see. It seems like Xavier Howard isn't giving up on the season yet. Everything I've heard out of him or seen from him in interviews seems like he's actually very motivated to get back onto the field and hopefully shut down the league's leading receiver in 2019.
Yeah, I mean, football is a great game. Who wouldn't want to be out there playing, right? So, I think the Chargers, man, I'm so tilted about this Melvin Gordon thing because, these coaches are breadcrumbing us. They're like, he's not going to play this week. Then we find out Justin Jackson is in a boot, and they're like, well, maybe he'll play this week. And then they're like, he'll play this week, but on a limited role. Then they're like, well, he's actually not going to play. It's just going to be emergency backup. And, I mean, there's so many different, messages coming out here. And the smart play is to probably just stay away on Draftkings and Fantasydraft where it's expensive. But on Fanduel, where Melvin Gordon is the minimum, I think maybe you can take some shots. I could definitely see it going wrong for Eckler if they're just putting out false information for posturing with this whole contract negotiation thing. So I'm a little bit worried, but Miami is just such a good matchup. The Chargers are projected for 29 points, and they're just riddled with injuries of so many guys that it makes it really hard to avoid Eckler and Keenan Allen.
Okay. Yeah, Ben.
I just want to say real quick, I want to be clear. It's not that Keenan Allen is someone I plan to have in some of my lineups. There's no doubt. I just don't think that this is a home run, 45 points, Chargers beat down style. And I feel much better about the Allen side of it than Eckler. Eckler's price makes it harder to get to, in my opinion.
And I'm just trying to provide some alternative perspective to this, and maybe there isn't one. But by the way, isn't Virgil Green out too?
Yeah, he's gone too. They have literally nobody left.
You're not a believer in Sean Culkin?
Yeah, Sean Culkin. That's Lance Kendricks and Sean Culkin season. This is what I'm talking about, though. I know Miami is bad, but if I'm trying to paint a glass half full, they had a chance to be leading at halftime last week, and a sloppy turnover by Drake in the red zone prevented that. Then Dallas asserted its will in the second half, and it's 31-6 when you look at it. That game was a little closer than 25 points, though. Now Miami is at home, and the Chargers offense, say what you will, but they are as banged up as I've seen a team in a long, long time.
It's bad, man. It is really bad. So final thoughts on this one then, Ben. You see yourself underweight on Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler just because they're so popular?
So I'm 1,000% under on Eckler, no doubt about that. Keenan Allen, I probably come in under, but that's more so that the field likes him that much. It's a play that I'm fine with in the sense of, and Chad has mentioned this, and I'm not disagreeing. Rivers is going to have to look to him, even if Howard is on him. But at the same time, I'm not going to allocate 40% of my lineups to someone like Keenan Allen this week. That's just not going to happen.
And I think sometimes it's easy to forget that just because Allen could have a very big game doesn't mean that Julio Jones or DeAndre Hopkins, at comparable price points, couldn't have bigger games.
Absolutely. There's always an opportunity cost, so you have to consider that.
What about the Miami Dolphins, your boy Kenyon Drake?
I mean, I have there is a couple spots where I tried to take a stab on both sides of this game, and Preston Williams and Kenyon Drake were guys that I looked to. But it's still, even though I'm saying that, it's very tough to go to a team where you really don't know how many touchdowns they're going to get. If it's only, you have to almost hit the lone touchdown, sadly, and that's scary.
Yeah. Are you interested in, you're right. Are you interested in any Dolphins here, Alex?
I think if I'm stacking up Rivers with a couple of guys in the Chargers, I'd probably run it back with the Dolphin. But because they're so bad for fantasy, I probably would just prefer to pick a different quarterback to begin with. But if I ran it back, it'd be with Drake. What I'd be hoping for is some rushing touchdowns early in the game, get ahead, and then Chargers have to throw the ball. Or I'd go to Albert Wilson. He should be mostly back from his injury. And he's been really productive over the past season with Miami. When he's been on the field, he just hasn't been able to make it on the field very much because of injuries. So that's kind of a interesting GPP play because it is someone with some good talent.
It's kind of amazing to me that Devontae Parker is fourth in air yards through 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah. I mean, he only catches 40% of his passes, so that also makes him a good GPP play because if you get lucky on that coin flip a bunch of times, then you're off to a pretty good day.
Yeah. The only thing that sucks is that he's probably going to see Casey Hayward's shadow treatment. What's that, Ben?
Yeah, absolutely. Him and whoever's in the slot, Desmond King is serious business.
Yes.
Which is why Preston Williams by default would be, if I had to take one, the guy I'd go to, but that's risky in itself.
I agree with you. I actually like him. Relatively speaking, I think there is some upside here only because his routes, his snaps, his targets, all of them have been trending upward. Now, I think we have to consider or ask ourselves what happens now that Albert Wilson returns to this offense. But I guess that's worth finding out.
Yeah, that remains to be seen. Now, if you want to take the stab and be maybe a week early, it could pay big dividends, but you also have to assume that there's serious risk trying to infer what Wilson does.
All right. Just looking at some news here, according to Ian Rappaport, Jalen Ramsey will play today.
Meh.
I think that's all we got right now. Trying to hit you with anything that's important. that might have any impact on your lineups, only because that game is the last one that we'll get to. Let's talk about the Giants and Washington Redskins. Alex, this is a really interesting game, as a matter of fact. Daniel Jones was outstanding in his debut. Saquon Barkley is hurt. He has been telling people, though, reportedly, that he will beat this timetable, but it won't be today. So that's all that matters. Wayne Gallman, in no uncertain terms, stinks. He should be getting some work today. I don't know how much. I don't know. It's wild to think that he just inherits a Saquon Barkley-like workload. It's just ridiculous. But he is pretty inexpensive. Evan Ingram has been outstanding. One of my top tight ends on the day. And then Sterling Shepard should also see quite a bit of work. Golden Tate doesn't return for another week. And then on the other side, Alex, Terry McLaurin has just been really, really special through 3 weeks. Solid, speedy rookie. But now he's a game time decision. They think he'll play. My issue is, and I actually want to start with the Washington team. I want to start with Terry McLaurin here. My issue is, this was a Thursday injury, and it's a hamstring on a guy that relies on speed to produce. Even if he plays, I have some legitimate concerns there, despite him obviously being one of the better values on the slate if he wasn't hobbled.
Yeah, I think that's a legitimate concern. I mean, anytime you got a guy who's questionable, you don't always know exactly what you're getting. But in most sports, if a guy's playing, that means they're good to go because there's so many games. In NFL, that's not the case, so we have to speculate to some extent. But if he is a full go, I think that he is a great value. So I'm not going to be shying away from him. Hopefully that questionable tag will reduce his ownership a little bit. And there's so many good plays in this game to stack it up just because everyone's cheap.
Ben, Giants 3-point favorites, 25.5 implied total, 22.5 for the Skins, 48 over under, pretty solid. Starting with the Skins here, and your thoughts on Terry McLaurin, and do you look to a guy like Trey Quinn, who's been on the field, almost all of the time, and has seen a very fair share of targets. It's just most of them, his ADOT's probably like half a yard. But he's getting work. He has 7 targets in each of his last 2, at least 6 on every game this season. Maybe he finds his way into the end zone. He is also minimum salary, so that's one of the reasons to discuss this. But thoughts on McLaurin, Richardson, and just basically all of the pass catchers here?
That's the man for me, Richardson. I like him. He's also getting the work. He's cheap enough, without spending it. Again, I didn't have a hard time with the cap this week. There's so much value out there. You can kind of do what you want.
Almost too much.
Almost too much. There's no doubt. And that goes back to the McCaffrey thing. McLaurin, yeah, it's definitely a serious issue. It's one of the things I want to monitor as closely as possible leading up to lock, because if he is hobbled in any way, A, it gives a massive boost to Quinn and Richardson, and B, naturally you don't want to play him. So we'll see. This is a game. These teams are playing fast. They're awful defenses. I mean, Josh Norman is dust. The Giants' entire defense is awful. There's a lot of ways to go. I didn't get to as much Keenum as I thought I would. I went to the other side in terms of the quarterback, but there's no doubt that there are viable plays on both sides of this one.
Who are your favorite ones?
So it would probably be, we'll see with McLaurin's news. I like Richardson, though. I think that he makes just a nice pivot off that. He's seeing the work, and even if McLaurin plays, it's not like, oh, he's dead now. He can easily get there on his own merit. And then on the other side, you guys already mentioned Ingram. What's not to like? You see that how fast he was running last week? That's insane.
Yeah.
He's a fast man. Shepard also makes a fantastic spot. Daniel Jones I was very impressed, as most people were. He looked really good, and I think that's going to be a boost to these pass catchers, especially before Tate comes back next week.
He said it's the fastest he's ever run.
Good. Well, hopefully he can top that this week with some plays.
Alex, your top players from this game on both sides, and why, of course.
Chris Thompson just continues to be a cheapie. The Giants are favoring the game, so if they're playing if Washington's playing from behind, with Darius Geis out, he should be getting some nice volume. He's pretty cheap on Fantasydraft at 8,800 and on Yahoo at 13. And then the Giants really are the chalk city here. with Gallman. I think he's a great play. The Giants are favored to win this game, and if they're up in the game, they're going to run the ball. They're probably not going to run it with Daniel Jones. If they're leading, they're going to run it with Gallman. Maybe a couple Elijah Penny appearances, but he's a converted fullback, so not your prototypical running back. And we got Ingram at the tight end position. That makes a really nice stack with the quarterback because it's hard to get a tight end that produces at that level. And then Shepard is a little bit more expensive than I'd like. So I probably wouldn't go to him as my top option, but he's in the mix.
Okay. Ben, anything else from this game?
No, I mean, the guy, Daniel Jones, is the toughest one for me because it feels a little like chasing. And he's not going to be putting out 40 points every week. I think we all know that. He's not going to be finding the end zone twice on the ground. I think we all know that. But it's still a cheap guy that, against this spot, I'm willing to continue to buy on him just because of he's at home against the Redskins. That's a pretty nice spot. And this price, I think, will continue to rise.
All right, let me...
Ben, are you a Giants or Jets fan? Just so I know how to take this.
So I really could care less about either of them, but I would definitely say Jets.
Okay.
Not a Giants guy.
Okay,
I owe them my life because they beat the Patriots twice, and that's a debt I can never repay.
All right. Let me just ask you guys one more question. Both of you can answer this, Ben and then Alex. Where does Gallman stack up as far as all of the value plays go on this slate?
So I think you just mentioned it. Gallman in a vacuum would be someone I'd probably be forced into, but I have 100 different options on this slate. So I just found the extra money to guys like Carry-On and those type players. More often than not, I don't trust Gallman nearly as much as others.
Okay. Yeah, neither do I. Alex?
I like Gallman a lot. Our ownership for him isn't nearly as high as it could be and be justifiable. So I think that he's a good play. Not my favorite of the slate. It's still got to come, but he offers some real salary relief, and he's in a great spot.
Okay. Alex, what are your thoughts on Arizona and Seattle here? An Arizona team that, as I mentioned, they have just been absolutely bludgeoned by opposing tight ends. How long does that last? That's a good question. But, of course, Greg Olsen, monster game. Mark Andrews, huge game. TJ Hawkinson, huge game. All three of them through the first 3 weeks have crushed them, particularly in the middle of the field. We'll start with Seattle here. Will Dissly is getting quite a bit of ownership. And I think, just knowing that Nick Vannett was traded to the Steelers definitely adds to that appeal. I don't know how much it should, but it definitely does, and it is, as we're seeing in ownership. But or as we're seeing, pretty much everywhere. But what do you make of the passing game first, and then we'll get into the weeds with this run game after Carson's fumbled and lost 3 of them in each of his last 3 games?
I like the passing a lot. I mean, Arizona, one of the weaker teams in the league, and they play at a really high pace. So I think that Seattle could definitely get it done through the air in a competitive game. Dissly is super popular, but understandably so because Vannett was traded. They brought in Luke Wilson to back up Dissly, and although he was a Seahawk a couple of years back, he probably isn't fully worked into their scheme now. So I think it's reasonable to assume Dissly will get more work than he had before, and that'll be a nice spot for him at the price. Metcalf and Lockett are the other options. Lockett, probably the more reliable but higher owned option. And they went off last week, Lockett and Wilson, so I'm expecting a little bit of bump in ownership because of that. But I think that they still offer a lot of value here.
Okay, Ben, what about you for this passing game?
So last week, the Saints took control of that game, and it caused Wilson to explode trying to play catch-up. We saw some of that. Now, this Dissly situation is, it's, he's going to be really popular, and he has no upside yards after the catch. He could fall in the end zone twice, and he could do the Ebron, I guess you call that. I'll say this: as more value has opened up, I've certainly soured on him more and more. I thought, oh, this is a necessary $3,600 tight end on DraftKings and cheap across the industry. But more and more, it's not. You can pay up across the board with some of these other options. So I get the merit. I see, like everyone, what the Cardinals have done against tight ends. But let's be real, that Disley is live to see a handful of targets and not find the end zone, and he gets you 7 points.
Yeah, even like 40 yards and a touchdown isn't going to kill you if you don't have him.
No, I mean, to really, I guess that's my question. If you don't play him, what kills you? 2 touchdowns, but if he doesn't find the end zone twice, what is really the damage?
On a slate like this, I'd think he'd need 20.
Yeah, 20, and that's 770 and a touchdown on a full point PPR.
Right, or what? 2 touchdowns for 40 yards on 4 receptions or something.
Yeah, I mean, that's, like I said, that's the Ebron, where it's like 2 catches, 4 touchdowns because he ran. Like, all right, well, let's close the laptop.
More touchdowns than receptions.
Yeah, insane. Alex ended up Lockett, the more expensive and more owned of the 2 pass catchers, rightfully so. And then I would be lying if I said I'm not worried about Carson fumbling once again. He's on the shortest leash possible. If he fumbles again and Penny plays, he's toast. But I do like the spot if he gets going, that's for sure.
Dude, I was hoping. Well, first of all, we don't know if Penny's going to play.
No, we don't.
And if Penny was going to be active, I actually would have had quite a bit of interest in him, assuming that his ownership would still be very low. But we don't know. Do they go back to Carson here? This is honestly a spot where I'm just in, flat out avoid mode.
I get that, but I'll say this: in tournaments, not everyone, but most people are soured on Carson.
That's a good point. Yeah,
it's only week 4, so like this is a situation. What are they going to do? Just keep him in the doghouse for 3 months? Like at some point, they're going to have to get back if they want to go anywhere. They need Carson. So it's almost cut off your nose to spite your face style if they bench him right from the get-go. I don't see that happening. And against the Cardinals team where they're a 6-point favorite, I think the Seahawks control this game on the ground a little bit.
Okay. And there's also that risk though that he fumbles again, Alex. It's just that it's a scary situation.
For sure, but fumbles really aren't that common in the NFL.
Unless you're Chris Carson.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he's got some serious butterfingers or something, but the most likely outcome is he doesn't fumble today. Of course, your guy in any situation can have a bad game, and then you lose your money. And that's certainly a reasonably likely outcome for Carson. He's not a top play with Penny probably being back, but he should be a good GPP play because if Seattle's up big on Arizona, he could run it 20 times.
Okay. What about the Arizona side of the ball, Alex? They obviously run a lot of plays. It's just many of them are bad plays. And look, Murray's thrown the ball 40-plus times in each of his first 3 games. Even in the first game where they went into that overtime period, he threw 54 total times. I mean, it's an immense amount of volume that we're seeing here, which again is why guys like Christian Kirk might only have 59 yards last week, but he has 10 receptions on 12 targets. And Larry Fitzgerald came up empty for the most part, but still gave you 14.6 DraftKings points because he got into the end zone and still had 5 receptions because they just throw the ball so much. How does that affect your thinking on this game? And what does that do for David Johnson as well?
I think that Arizona makes a nice play here. You would expect it because they're such big dogs to Seattle, but Kyler Murray, he adds a little bit of rushing upside for his cheap price, and the fact that they're down should mean that Arizona will have to throw the ball a ton. There are 2 targets in Larry Fitzgerald and Christian Kirk who are pretty reliable. So, and I know most of you guys have access to this, but on my top stacks tool, Kyler Murray is projected for 5% ownership, but I have Arizona projected for a 6% chance of the top stack. And I think one reason is because they run so many plays, there's more variance in the outcome of the plays. So I think Arizona, pretty much every week they're playing and they're cheap, I'm going to be on the train.
Okay. What about you, Ben?
Yeah, I like them as well. I thought Kyler Murray has looked pretty awful, and then if you look at his, check the box score in terms of fantasy production, it's been fine. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not been your ceiling, but if he can be a little more efficient and not take 8 sacks, that'll work wonders.
Watching him has looked ugly. Like, if you actually watch those games,
Terrible.
it does not look good.
Which I think is a good thing because there's a disconnect. This is
Sure.
about fantasy production. It's not about. I don't think Kyler Murray is good. And last week was the first week he started to run a little more. I think that's going to be, when we look back on the season, that's going to be more the trend than his first couple weeks where he was really apprehensive to get moving. So this is a spot. I like him. You have his pass catchers. This Bird fella is out. That was a disaster last week. But, Kirk and Fitz are the guys, they're going to be on the field. David Johnson's running a lot of routes from the running back position. So you have options to pair him up. And even in games, like Alex said, they run so many plays. You're going to have opportunities across the board with these guys, even if it's pretty inefficient.
Your favorite options from this game?
It would be Murray and David Johnson on the Cardinals side and Lockett on the Seahawks side.
Okay. Just throw it out there, by the way, that Metcalf is good.
He is
and that 2-touchdown game will come eventually. So he's not that expensive. And it's also possible that, Metcalf scores twice and Will Dissly doesn't score at all. And he's not, the same price as Will Dissly, but he's also not expensive either. He's seen 6 targets or more in all 3 games and has a legitimate 2-touchdown upside with his hands and his size. So I think Metcalf is always in play in a spot like this. Let's talk about the Rams and the Tampa Bay Bucks. Ben, what do you have here? The Bucks blew another should-be win. Jameis Winston looked great, red hot in the first half, and then in the second half just completely unraveled, at least from an ability to get them on the board. But here you have it now, going up against the Rams in LA. I don't think it's surprising to anyone that they are pretty big dogs on the road. I mean, what is it right now? 9 points? Yeah, 9-point dogs, 28.7 total for the Rams, 19.7 for the Bucks. Look, I was happy to see that Winston could exploit a really easy matchup last week, but here we go, getting thrown back into the fire against the Rams defense that has definitely looked solid.
Yeah, not a spot I'm looking to target at all. The defensive line for the Rams is going to cause just problems. I'll leave it at that. Not going to chase. Mike Evans was certainly a bright spot of, I think, most of our lineups. We were on him pretty good. Godwin was terrible. Saquon killed me. That's another story. But I'm not going to really go to the Bucks. I think we saw that O.J. Howard long-term probably going to be all right. He'll have some opportunities. But this is just a tough game against a tough Rams defense.
Okay, Alex, what boat are you in here? The same as Ben or another one?
I like Jameis today. I think that tough matchup. I mean, you can't project a lot of touchdowns here on average. But being such big dogs, they should have to throw the ball a lot. And they have two great options, Evans and Godwin, for fantasy. And they have O.J. Howard as kind of a dart throw. So I think they can kind of exceed their median projection here just because the situation calls for a lot of passing, and at that point you want the other team to be putting up points so that your guy keeps passing, and that's likely to happen with the Rams. So if all you guys watching roster Jameis with me, we can all eat a W later and maybe some Hooters wings.
Oh, it just sounds horrible.
Yeah, I totally get that angle of it. Playing from behind, I just worry a lot about. I could see this really being an ugly game where the Bucks are just completely overmatched.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good Rams team and a really bad Bucks team. I guess we'll see how it plays out. I guess the question is, will Jameis be able to get it done even in garbage time? Or maybe we'll assume that there won't be garbage time and this game's competitive. But I guess my problem, Ben, is I haven't seen anything from the Bucks to convince me that they're competent even remotely, and that scares me.
No, they're not competent. They took a delay of game because their kicker likes longer field goals, and then he missed. Like, that just sums up the team. Like, there's nothing else to say about the team after that.
Hold on a second. I actually missed. I was doing Awesemo Radio and I had it muted. Did that really happen?
If I need to. They took a delay of game on the game-winning field goal because their kicker likes longer field goals, and then he missed. That's just there's no coming back from that.
Do you know I was supposed to interview him on Sirius that day? We had it all.
That should be your first question. Is just on God's name, what are you thinking?
Needless to say, he wasn't on the line. Oh man! All right. What else do you have on this one, Alex? Anything else? I think we need to get to. I was talking anything else on the Jameis side, but I think we covered it. What about the Rams side?
I think Kupp has emerged as the top option for Goff. I like Goff depending on the site. He offers a lot of upside, and then there's some nice options on Tampa to run it back with. Kupp has gotten the most targets when he's on the field of all three of the wideouts, so I like him the most. But really, I mean, any of these guys can get it done. And then Todd Gurley is someone who is kind of a pay-up-to-be contrarian option to some extent because they're not really standing out with a lot of the value options, but we know that if the Rams have a big day, he could easily get in a couple touchdowns, so I might have some exposure to him.
Okay, Ben, are you interested in Cooper Kupp and this offense for the Rams?
No doubt. You know, those pass catchers are always very difficult because all three of them any given week. To me, I guess I'm going against the grain. I think Robert Woods is someone that I don't mind trying to buy low compared to the other two. You know, he's someone he sees a couple carries. He had a touchdown called back. You know, Cooks is more of that home run threat. He still has some stable production, but I really think any of them make fine plays. Not a game that I'm stacking up a ton, but I still looked to those Rams pass catchers in spots for sure.
Okay. What about the backfield, man? It is.
I gave up on Gurley. The price makes it much tougher this week. On certain, so you know, on DraftKings, I'm looking pretty premium kind of across. So, it's just a tough spot. I still think the big games are there, but not as. I was trying to get to him more spots in recent weeks than I am this week.
Yeah, man. I don't know, Alex. It's a tough spot to really have any faith right now in Todd Gurley.
Yeah, I mean, if you have too much faith in your GPP lineup, you're doing it wrong because you got to roster some guys that make you uncomfortable. Otherwise, you're going to have the same lineup as everyone else. And this week is a little site-specific. On Fantasydraft, he's 12K. That's about 1K less than DraftKings when you even out the salaries. And then on Fanduel, he's 6,800. That's actually a pretty good value. I mean, there's better values on the slate, but I definitely think on FanDuel he's a good play.
Okay. Look, I'm not even going to argue that. My only thing here, it's not even about feeling comfortable that he can't get it done. It's watching him. He looks nothing like the Todd Gurley that I've seen in previous seasons. Like the explosiveness that I don't know. He doesn't look the same to me, but I guess it is the Bucks. So there's always that working in his favor. Let's move on then. We got 2 to go. Ben, I don't know how much we spend on this game, Minnesota and Chicago. It's not a particularly enticing game from a fantasy standpoint. Both teams have implied totals under 20. It has an over-under of 38, which is effectively the lowest on the slate outside of Jacksonville and the Broncos, which we will get to next and close the show out with. But before we do, Deeper Dive is the sign-up code, all one word, to get 50% off your first month at awesemo.com. All access Awesemo Plus subscription get you 50% off by using the sign-up code Deeper Dive. It'll get you the ownership projections, the player projections, the top stack tool. We have a Fantasy Cruncher add-on, the lineup builder, all of our premium articles, and so much more. All of these tools developed and used daily by Alex Baker, Awesemo himself. Use that sign-up code Deeper Dive, get 50% off your first month, or check out our weekly passes and all of our other options available to you at awesemo.com/join. Okay, Ben. Like I said, 38 over under, sub 20 implied totals for both teams here.
Bad game. Competitive game in real life, but not one I'm looking to Both teams' quarterbacks are ones that they don't want to fall behind and have to lean on these, especially against each other's defenses. Dalvin Cook, it's really tough to ask him to go against this Bears defense on the road. I don't have much to say. It's not a game. I'm not getting too cute. I don't have much, if at all, from this one.
All right, simple enough. What about you, Alex?
I got a lot of exposure to this game. I'm actually going there a little bit later today.
Nice.
But, yeah, that's about the limit to my exposure to that game. Maybe I'll throw in like a single game lineup or something. But I think that, I mean, you could sprinkle in some Cook. He could have a huge volume today. It's Montgomery, but they're not really good values.
Okay.
It's just a tough spot to ask, Like, I thought Dalvin Cook was interesting just because no one is going to go there, but his price is so premium that even if he's good against the Bears, he's still not going to probably produce to what you're going to pay up to do.
No, it's a truly miserable spot. There's no question. I'm with you there. I really don't even think we need to spend much more time. Again, both teams have totals under 20. It's a 38 over under. I just don't think you need to get there. And, it's like, all right, are touchdowns going to be scored? Probably, but what's the 2 touchdown upside on Allen Robinson or on Dalvin Cook? And even so, it seems really tough to get those huge, big chunk plays. I'm not feeling it. Ben, are you feeling Denver or Jacksonville? Like I said, the only total lower than Minnesota, Chicago is Jacksonville, Denver at 37. 17 implied total for the Jags, 19.7 for the Broncos. This one's fun.
Yeah, very bad. And Ramsey's apparently playing. That can only make things worse. It's windy. That can only make things worse. I have nothing really to say. I will say that the Broncos defense somehow hasn't recorded a sack or a turnover yet, which is one of the craziest things I've ever heard.
Wow.
I know. I can't believe that with Von Miller and Chubb, no sacks through 3 games. It's not a hot take. That will be changing today. I think they do get after Minshew a bit. And put in a nice performance at home and win this game somewhat convincingly.
Okay. What about you, Alex? Close us out.
I think Denver has some decent plays, and Lindsey kind of being the value running back. Maybe that's going under the radar. Emmanuel Sanders had a rough game last week, but he had a good start to the season, so I'm hoping he can pick it up. Really, the guy I'm interested in is Fournette. Whenever you have a running back that's on the field for the whole game, I mean, that is a great situation. And what I'm hoping for is Jacksonville will exceed their 17-point expectation for today. They'll probably need to do that for me to win with Fournette. But that is likely enough that I'm probably going to have a ton of them because I think that he's not going to be popular with most people because he just hasn't produced any big fantasy performances yet this season.
No, he's actually gone backwards.
Yeah. Hopefully, if Jacksonville's playing for the lead, he can rush for positive yards and get you points.
Before the fourth quarter, at least. All right, well, we are through, of course, all 12 games. We've got the Live Before Lock show coming up at noon Eastern time, and then the Sunday Night Showdown Live Before Lock coming up at 7:30. So we've got a ton of shows for you today on this Sunday, Week 4. Before we go, Ben, give me the hot take of Week 4.
I'm going to say that the Dolphins keep it in single digits.
Just go with the win. Come on.
No, I can't do that. That's too extreme. And I did hit mine last week with the Saints. I'm trying to build something here. Let's not get – it's Week 4. I need to pace myself with horrible, egregious hot takes.
Wow, Laffy is just stunned.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's why you can't be doing Dolphins outright. It literally breaks the stream if you talk about that. We're not getting that crazy. I will say I think the Dolphins keep it competitive, though.
All right. Alex, close us out. What else you got for us before we take off for the morning?
Hot take. I'm gonna make this my hot take, and I'm not gonna put a ton of money behind this, but I think Melvin Gordon will play more than advertised.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah, a lot of coach speak there.
I could see him having like 2 touchdowns at the goal line.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. I also think that maybe 15 minutes before lock, there's going to be people tweeting out, Gordon's actually starting this game. Like last week, I mean, it was kind of erroneous, but I could see that. But that doesn't mean I'm off Eckler. But Laffy, man, what's your hot take?
Oh man! All right.
Yeah, good job, Awesome. Put him on the spot. Yeah, he weaseled out of here almost.
I wasn't prepared for this. All right. Well, I guess I got to come up with something, right? I'm gonna go with Will Dissly doesn't have more than 2 receptions or 20 yards today.
Ooh,
Wow.
that's a good one.
Look, I get it. I get why he's chalky. I totally do. But I also don't think that this team needs even a little bit out of Will Dissly to win this game. And sometimes it's like, how would it be that crazy to think that Metcalf and Lockett and maybe even Carson get all the work? So I get it. Anyone running heavy Will Dissly, I totally understand it. But and of course now he's going to go for career high 3 touchdowns and 100 yards. But I think it's very tough for Will Dissly to kill you if you don't have him. And if he does, I'll bite the bullet on that one. All right, that'll do it for us. If you enjoy the show, you want to help support us at Awesemo, the channel, the site, we greatly appreciate a thumbs up, liking the video, subscribing, hitting that notification bell so you always know when new content's going to drop next. We appreciate it, and good things will happen to you as a result. You might even win today. We hope you do. Best of luck. We'll see you back here on Sunday's Deeper Dive for Week 5.